Hi everyone, Dr. Victoria Scarbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center. Here I am. Where am I? Hi. I can't see. I can't see where I am. So I thought I would start doing some charts on the candidates who have the highest numbers. And we're going to start with Joe Biden. He, of the latest polls, I believe still has the highest numbers, although they are changing and shifting now. But I want to take a quick look at Joe, and we're going to do it from the perspective of evolutionary astrology. And this is based on the work of Jeff Green out of the Seattle area originally, I guess. And so let's get started. So the first thing we look at with evolutionary astrology is the position of Pluto. And so Joe Biden was born in 1942, and as all people born in 1942, he has his Pluto in Leo, and he has it at 7 degrees Leo, 13 minutes. Incidentally, the north node of the United States of America is at, I believe, 6 degrees of Leo. So Joe has his Pluto on the north node of the United States, and this does indicate that he would be definitely somebody who helped to transform the United States in the direction of its destiny. So we can give Joe that. Now, when we look at the placement of Pluto from a personal standpoint, it's where Pluto sits in the chart that indicates Joe's personal experience and personal challenges with Pluto. Now, Joe has his Pluto in Leo, as everybody does, from about 1938 to 1959. And so Pluto and Leo generation is a generation that comes in with a deep sense of special destiny, a sense that they have something to share with others. They want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be loved. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in order for people to evolve, they generally don't get their needs met. And so the generation, the Pluto in Leo generation, in order for that generation to evolve, they needed to move into the polarity point of Leo, which is Aquarius. And so for Joe, the polarity point of Pluto is down here in his second house at 7 degrees of Aquarius, 13 minutes. Okay, that's his polarity point. And so in order for his soul to evolve, it needs to move in this direction. Now, he has his Pluto in Scorpio's house, in the 8th house, natally. And so people who have Pluto, first of all, Pluto likes being in the 8th house because Pluto is the natural ruler of Scorpio, so there's a familiarity here. But this can be emotional hell. Okay? It can be emotional hell. And there is a sense of coming up against forces greater than self, namely death. And he has had a lot of death in his life. Where Pluto falls in your chart is where, on a certain level, you're most comfortable. And in his case, not necessarily emotional hell or death, but deep, abiding relationship. So relationship becomes very important for Joe. But having Pluto in that 8th house, you can have a tendency of becoming codependent. Okay. Now, in order for him to evolve, he needs to move that Pluto in Leo to the polarity point of Pluto in Aquarius, which is much more objective. The thing with Pluto in Leo is it's very subjective. It's a very subjective sign, Leo, the most subjective sign. And of course, Aquarius is the most objective sign. And it's in the 2nd house. And so in order for Joe's soul to evolve, he needed to move in the direction of Aquarius, which is about working toward the common good, which he has done, in the 2nd house, which is it's very practical. There's a very practical need here because we're dealing with the Taurus house. It has to do with values, and so he needs to be true to his values. All right. And it also has to do with self-worth and self-esteem. And so he came in to learn to really love himself through service to others and the collective in a very nuts and bolts practical way. Now, that being said, Pluto is mostly unconscious, okay? And so with Pluto being unconscious, where are we conscious? Where are we most conscious? How does Pluto work through our conscious evolution? And it does that through the nodes of the moon. The karmic axis is Pluto, the polarity point of Pluto, the nodes of the moon, and the rulers of the nodes of the moon by house and sign. So we have here his south node in Pisces in the third house. And Pisces is an archetype of dissolution. Okay, so we have dissolution here. In the third house, this is about the neighborhood. Joe who rode the bus, right, or rode the train into Washington every day. There is a self-sacrificing here. Okay, there's a sense of self-sacrifice with Pisces. Okay, and again with Neptune here, he's had a lot of losses very close to home. His north node is in Virgo, up here in the ninth house. And this is about coming up with a philosophy of life that's both practical, Virgo, and constantly changing or constantly being improved upon. So, to a certain extent, his change in his mind. This is the lower mind. This is the higher mind. Okay, this is the past. This is the future, to a certain extent, and so his changing of his ideas and his opinions are actually part of his evolutionary path here. What ideas? Now he is very Catholic. Okay, Pisces is a sign of Christ, often seen as the sign of Christ. Pisces, Virgo is the axis associated with Christianity. And so we can see those themes in his life. And so he really is here to develop a philosophy of life and a truth for himself that is reflected through his work, Virgo, in the context of truth and justice. Okay, so we can see that this is somebody who public service would be very important for his evolution. If we look at the ruling planets of the nodes, we can get another sort of layer to this. And here we have the ruling planet of Pisces. There's actually two rulers to Pisces. The first one being Neptune, which we have here in the 10th house. He has Neptune in Libra in the 10th house. Of course, Libra is law. The 10th house is career, and it is the house of the leader or the president. Okay, and we also look at Jupiter, and he has Jupiter. Where is his Jupiter? He has Jupiter here in the 8th house in Cancer. His Jupiter at 25 degrees of Cancer is actually conjunct the Mercury of the United States. And so the Mercury is at like 24 degrees. And so there is a communication between him and the people of the country. There is an understanding there. And Jupiter being there is a benefic energy. And so there's this sort of like good uncle kind of vibe that we can get from Joe, okay, in America. He's like the everybody's favorite uncle, right? Okay, so we have that. Now, if we look at his Neptune, we talked about Neptune, we talked about that. Okay, so that's the south node ruler. The north node ruler is his Mercury, because we're dealing with Virgo here, and he has Mercury in Scorpio. and his Mercury is in Scorpio in the 12th house. So having Mercury in Scorpio in itself is very psychic, but having it in the 12th house makes it more so. And so there is this hidden there's hidden motivations with Joe. And I'm not saying that they're purposely hidden motivations. I'm saying that he's not always aware of why he thinks the way he thinks at the time that he thinks it. There's a fluidity to his thinking. We can also look at the ruler of the nodes by house. And the ruler by house, the south node ruler is Mercury. So Mercury becomes very important because it's the south node ruler by house and it's the north node ruler by sign. And then we can look at Venus, the ninth house ruler by sign, and we have Jupiter here. And we know that Jupiter is the ruler here. So there's this sort of mutual, I don't know if you could call it a mutual reception, but there is this flow telling me that this is not his first rodeo in this type of work. He's had past lives where he has dealt with these issues of expansion of thought, and dealing with the details would be very important. Now, let's just look at his chart in general. He has a Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius rising is very optimistic. There's an optimism about him, but not necessarily all that good with details, Sagittarius. The ruling planet is Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, so we feel him. He's very feeling. He's very emotional. His emotions are big because we're dealing with Jupiter in the 8th house, but there's a hidden quality here. And so he is a Scorpio. He actually has 4 planets in Scorpio. And so he has a lot of Scorpio energy. So there is this depth to Joe Biden that he may or may not show us. He has a very pleasant exterior here with the Sagittarius ascendant, but all of this in the 12th house belies a depth. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is that he has his nodes in 0 degrees 8 minutes of Pisces, south node 0 degrees 8 minutes of the north node in Virgo. He actually has his Venus and his Sun and his Mercury, but it's wide. Mercury's wide, but Venus is very tight in a square to his nodes. And when you have Venus square the nodes like that, you will have issues with relationship, and you'll have issues with self-worth and self-esteem. Okay? And so the resolution node for his Venus, okay, is actually the north node in Virgo. And so he needs to continuously apply himself to the future to make the adjustments necessary to figure out what is true and what is not true. All right. He has Saturn in the 7th house. He takes his relationships very seriously. But he does have it in Gemini. And Gemini is a sign that can flip-flop. There is a lot of sense, for somebody who has so much Scorpio, there's a lot of flip-flopping going on. But that's part of his process. So I think that's what I want to say about Joe. Let's see, he has Saturn. So having Saturn, just a few more, having Saturn in the 7th house says to me that he's a good partner. And he was really quite a good vice president, right? Quite a good foil for Barack Obama. Can he translate that into somebody who would be presidential? Does he have the wherewithal to be presidential? I would say that this is not the best chart for that. But this is a good chart for somebody who has a lot of understanding, who is constantly making the adjustments that they need to make, and just generally a good guy. This is the chart of somebody, I would say, who's generally a good guy, but perhaps not material for the highest office. there's less of a command. Now, oftentimes when you see this much stuff in the 12th house, actually Hillary Clinton had a lot in the 12th house. If you use the Scorpio rising chart, I think it's 8 something in the morning for that. But she had a Scorpio ascendant, so she came across as secretive, where Joe has a Sag ascendant, so he comes across as open. But how open is he really? His ruling planet is in the 8th house. So again, there's a lot of undercurrents here, and he does have to be careful about becoming codependent with this Pluto in that 8th house. So he's a very good partner. He's a good person as far to discuss things and sort of do that, but to actually lead, I don't see the strength in this chart as I see in some of the other candidates. Okay, so that's what I want to say about Joe. I hope you enjoyed that. Like and subscribe. I'm going to try to do one a day. I'll probably do either Liz Warren next or Bernie. And I've done one on Bernie and I've done one on Liz in the past. If you want to check back, I'll put a connection. A link. All right. It was great fun. Talk to you soon. Bye.